should we be out of cross gen already? That's
Mm.
the next question. So Rakeem, like, how do you feel about the fact that we're still in cross gen, and do you think this year needs to be the last year cross gen, or can we do cross gen like another year?
I'm mad at the cross gen. You know why? Because A, it was hard as a mud to get this console. B, we were in a pandemic for a little bit where things were kind of locked down and stuff was kind of iffy, and that caused supply issues. I think cross gen staying around an extra year actually kind of helped a little bit, kind of kept us engaged in gaming, so there wasn't a big drought between the new titles that got pushed back. I didn't really have a problem with that. However, I do agree. I think maybe next year, now that everything seems to slowly be like, hey, it's starting to come slow. I mean, we still have a chip shortage, of course, but
Yeah.
slowly we're definitely getting more supply models out. I think that's obvious. Maybe by next year, I think we can start kind of moving away from the cross gen, especially now that we have a lot more big titles that are coming out next year anyway, like exclusives. That might be the beginning of the end. I think they're kind of starting to phase those out slowly. I think the cross gen in the beginning, because of the issues we were having, and it's staying like an extra year farther than it normally would. I think that actually was a good thing. I think it allowed people who couldn't adapt to the new consoles to not feel so left out. And so when they moved into the PS5, they had the games they were already playing, so it was easy for them to adjust to it. That definitely worked for me because I played everything I played besides, Death Note, Deathloop, excuse me, I just got was cross gen. Elden Ring's cross gen because it has backwards compatibility anyway. But all these games are cross gen. Ghost of Tsushima has like the upgrades. Spider Man has the upgrades. I think it's a good thing. I don't have a problem with it. But maybe by next year, I think it's time to kind of table those out.
So you mean like the end of next year or like the middle of next year? Like,
Probably like the middle of next year.
okay, so like come fall 2023, it's like that it's about time to get cross gen up on out of
Yeah.
here. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Terrence, how do you feel about cross gen? Like, do you feel like is that like tying us down? Because isn't Street Fighter 6 supposed to be cross gen?
Yeah, Street Fighter 6 is cross gen, and I'll admit I kind of thought that we would be at the point now where we wouldn't have cross gen just because I, I feel like we haven't fully taken advantage of the console's power yet because we're still having to develop games for the prior gen. Well, we're still having to make next gen games run on prior gen hardware. It's like we haven't
Mm-hmm.
seen the full power of next gen, even with the games that are next gen exclusive, like Returnal or Deathloop. I feel like they haven't quite squeezed all of the power out just yet. And I mean, of course, usually like all the usually it's like the last 2 years of a system's lifespan where you see like the full power of it. I mean, like with PS2, we got Final Fantasy 12 and God of War 2 that were games that made everything that came out on the PS2 in like the early days look like nothing. Well, not like nothing, but just it was way better. I'll put it that way graphically. But I don't have a problem with cross gen the same way that Rakeem said, just because it's been a great way to kind of tide us over while supply issues get sorted out. But I do think that fall 2023 would be ideal, but part of me wants to say that I think 2024 is going to be the year where we really start to see the games go full next gen. Just because, I mean, stuff is still being developed right now, and I mean, the cross gen train hasn't stopped, so I just don't see a reason why the games that come out next year wouldn't still be cross gen. So, you know, but I'll say this, like if fall 2023 happens and the games going forward from then on are current gen, I'm not mad at it. I mean, not just because I have a next gen system, just because it's time. It's kind of, you have to come to a certain point where you have to realize is like, look, we have to let the old technology go and stick to just the new stuff, just because it's holding us back. We can't still be in cross gen in 2024 because at that point you're 4 years into the console's life cycle. Something has to change. So yeah, that's my take on it. What you
What's
got,
good,
Raheem?
Rakeem? Yeah.
I was great point, Terrence. I was going to put a great example of that is actually Elden Ring, and think about the Blue Point Demon Souls remake. So Elden Ring is a cross-gen game. You can kind of tell graphically it's kind of being held back. And I mean, not Elder Scrolls, but like that studio is not known for really graphically intensive games anyway. And then you see the Blue Point version of what a Demon Souls game can look like, and it looks ridiculously good.
Yeah.
So like you can kind of visually see where we should be at but we're still being held back by like cross gen. Like it's that comparable.
It's kind of like when Metal Gear Solid 4 came out on PS3. It was like, oh, this is at that time next gen. It's like, oh, this is a next gen game. So I think we haven't quite gotten that kind of game with this generation, but we're slowly getting there. Well, I'm curious to see how God of War 2 looks. I think God of War Ragnarok, that despite it being cross gen, I think that game is going to look phenomenal on PS5. So yeah.
I guess like I do think cross-gen is probably fine like right now, like, because here's the thing, yet again, like if you go back and you look at where things were last gen relative to this gen, 2014 was full of cross-gen games,
Yeah.
like jam-packed with it. So 2021 being full of cross-gen games, it was fine, like it really wasn't that big of a deal. And like 2015 was really only when you finally started to see them be like, okay, we're kind of done with cross-gen. It's time for you to move on. You've had your console. If you bought it at launch, you've had it since 2006. It's 2015 now. It's time to move on. And 2022 wasn't that, but it kind of is, right? Like Starfield was supposed to launch this gen. I think that's current gen only. Not Batman. Gotham Knights, they dropped their last gen version. They were like, nah, bro, it's just gonna be next gen or current gen only. And you're seeing like Final Fantasy. I think Final Fantasy 16 at first was supposed to have a PS4 version, but it's not going to now. So like, that's a thing to think about. And like, so I'm not bothered by it because, like y'all said, we kind of needed cross-gen at the start of this gen because you couldn't get a hold of anything. Like, you couldn't find a PS5, you couldn't find an Xbox Series X, and so like, what was I supposed to do? Like, not buy? Like, that would have screwed a lot of games that came out in the last year and a half. And so like, or it even like this, like the early parts of this year, like, what were they supposed to do? Like, they were still hard to come by, and it would have, like, if Elden Ring was, next gen only, no way it sells 12 million copies. Like, forget that. And it's the same with other consoles. Like, okay, good luck. Like, you're not gonna get what you should get. Not consoles, but games. Same thing with other games. Like, you're not gonna sell the millions of copies that you need to sell to justify all this time and all this effort that you put into making these games. So I don't think cross-gen is all that bad. I do think that starting really at the start of next year, like Keem said, the middle. Terrence, I think he said near the fall. I want from the start of next year. I don't want to see too many cross-gen games. Like, it's time to move on. It's time, and for us, because a lot of us, I think everybody here plays a lot of Japanese games. So for us, good luck. It's gonna be a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. Yeah.
Like, when the next Yakuza game comes out, you better believe that's gonna be cross-gen. When the next Trails game comes out, I know that's going to be cross-gen.
Lord.
And I'm pretty sure East 10, when you get East 10, Keem, I'm pretty sure that's going to be cross-gen.
Square's the only ones that are going to be on the next-gen train like that.
Really,
let's be honest, yeah.
They have the budget.
And even Square, like, their AA games, those are still probably going to be cross-gen because they need to sell every copy they can. And so, like, I understand. You wanted to make sure everybody had something, but like, it's time. It's past time to move on.